Hello everyone. So today we're going to be discussing NSX Advanced Load Balancer Troubleshooting Part 2. In this video, we'll be discussing the following items: control plane troubleshooting, events, audit trail, water debug logs, some scenarios about cluster issues and crowd connector issues, and other useful data you may need for troubleshooting those issues you may experience. Control plane troubleshooting overview. Control plane pretty much is the management aspect or management network of the product itself. This is the connectivity between service engines and controller, connectivity between the controller and its nodes if you have a 3-node cluster, etc. Controller plane issues mostly relate with cluster issues. Either the controller becomes unavailable, or one of the nodes become unavailable, or the full cluster becomes unavailable. The controller is up, but you cannot access the UI. You access the UI and you get certain errors, or you can get errors when trying to do certain configurations. Also, as well, cloud connected issues, either in VMware, Azure, or any other setup environments that we could connect with. Log indexing, metrics, and also, of course, database, Postgres related scenarios. Tools that you can use for the type of troubleshooting is the event information that is collected in the controller, the audit trail, and we're going to be explaining what that means later on, system logs, and CLI commands that will help you in isolate issues. Event trails. Events is pretty much collect every details that happens in the environment. Whose server goes down, an events get generated. New configuration and events get generated. In overall, events plus audit trail events collect user authentication, configuration changes done in the environment, objects that are invalid, objects that were down, virtual servers that were down, they became up. All details of an activity that's happened within the objects of the design would generate an alert. Would generate an event. Each event can be designed to correlate to trigger an alert. In later videos, I'll be explaining more those areas in detail, how you can configure those. Config audit trail, like I mentioned, is a specific type of event capture that will show authentication of users, and also configuration changes, either configuration updates, new creations, deleted configurations, etc. Very useful to identify and correlate if certain issues that you see in your environment, if any changes were done before that issue occurred. In the event audit trail, each detail of the configuration will be explained. Example, if you create a configuration, it will highlight information on what was created in what objects in detail. If you did a configuration update, it will show you the differences. Something was added or removed. Of course, if also the configuration was deleted. System logs, overall, is actually all the logs collected by each one of the controllers and service engines that can be used for troubleshooting. This could relay logs for configuration, management, monitoring. Not really readable in a sense. Are readable, but it's very verbose. So some users first may feel overloaded because of all the information that collected. But don't be afraid. The information is actually useful. You just need to take it carefully with a piece by piece, just to try to isolate it further. Very useful information troubleshooting. If you are working with, for example, with our support team, this is the most common information that's going to request to be able to help you on assisting you on your issues. This can be executed from the UI, or this can be executed from the CLI. I'm going to show you both when I go back to my lab. In the case of CLI, you can just run show tech support, where you have multiple options so you can execute. In general, cluster issues. You can recommend verify CPU, verify memory, verify the performance and the process run on each one of them, confirm between them if they can connect to each other, verify that if we're running out of space. But there are also specific logs that you can look at that relates to the communication of the controller between each controller node. And this is called the cluster manager info log. Show cluster status via CLI will also highlight details of what's the status, if it's compromised, if one node is down and those are available, if the full cluster is available with a good status as well. You can see this via the CLI. With cloud connector issues, in this example, in this scenario, we have a cloud connector set up for vCenter, but this could be for Azure, GCP, OpenShift, Kubernetes with KO, and so forth. It's very important to know that any cloud configuration that you have, it will generate its own log, so you can actually go to that specific log to see or isolate those cloud connector issues that you may experience. In the case of vCenter, it's a little bit different. It will have its own log, but it will also have all the logs including the vCenter manager log, the vCenter exception log, and the vManager log, info log. These are very unique to vCenter because of the libraries we use to be able to connect to vCenter to our product. So keep in mind, if you have a vCenter crowd setup, these are the logs you're looking for troubleshooting. vCenter Manager, vCenter Accept, and vManager info log. And using the following, using the also command, for example, if you have issues with authentication, if you have issues with that you set up your controller, your vCenter crowd setup, and you cannot connect to vCenter, so like that, there's also a command in CLI that is called verify logging that will easily highlight if, for example, you have issues with authentication. This happens very common with customers, users, that they want to use custom roles. Normally because administrator role has all the permissions, but in case you isolate, you want a specific permissions, this is very useful CLI command to verify that you can authenticate correctly to your vCenter for the setup. Any scenario that you see there, for example, if we also go out of sync with vCenter, we can also do what is called a rediscovery. So let's say you have your vCenter setup connected, and all of a sudden you see an alert that it cannot connect, it cannot discover, you don't see network, you see the host. You can force in the CLI a rediscovery. That will help you. Isolate and force the system to force the rediscovery to see if it's detected. Now, if the rediscovery works and you're successful, you're going to be back in play. But if it's not, then you can start isolating further why we cannot discover what's inside your vCenter configuration. Now, keep in mind, you always, if you get stuck in any point trying to troubleshoot your issue, you do have access to contact the support team to help you in assistance on this type of problems. All the cloud connector setups, all the logs. vCenter has this unique output in Windivo logs for analysis, but things like Azure, AWS, GCP, Kubernetes, etc. will have its own log starting with C_agent_ and the name that you use for the cloud configuration. Again, this applies to all the other cloud setups except the cloud for vCenter, which has its own different type of logs. There are other type of controller logs that you can also utilize. You have the port logs, in which will involve anything pretty much related to the API when talking to the controllers, or when the controllers are talking to each other. The PostGres logs, in which also represents the PostGres database that runs on each controller. This will also help you to make sure if they're already out of sync, if they're not connecting to each other, errors like that. Keep in mind one important thing, maybe I already have to mention on previous videos that you watch. When you have a 3-node controller, 1, 2, 3, each controller node connects to the other, and they will have a copy of the database. This database will be in sync between all of them. That way, if the leader controller goes down, a follower can come up as a leader and becomes and takes over. Now, if you have issues, this is out of sync, not connecting, this controller is going to be flagged down, because if it's not connected to the database, then it definitely cannot be in sync with everybody else. Very important log to know. And you're gonna log because pretty much any communication that handles NEX7, which is the core process that we use for the portal, the API, etc. We'll highlight it there. But also we have other system logs that you can see in under var log upstart, in which highlight things like a syslog. If you want to look at system, the system log itself within Linux, within the box, because here you may see errors like process aren't started, processes that are crashing, that creating cores for analysis. Very important. This is actually one of the most important logs when you see behaviors like controller doesn't become available, or it goes down or it cannot recover. Before we keep forward, I will jump to my lab and we can discuss a little bit more what we have seen so far. Okay. Weird. Try again. Okay, I guess I'll check my notes. Ah, there we are. Thank God I had this. Okay, that should work now. See? There we go. Oh, one more time. There you go. Perfect. Okay. Now, like was I mentioned before, we can always go to main menu, operations. We're gonna have under events, you're gonna have the event detail, and again, in which represents everything that goes on within the controller. As you can see, this is me trying to log in and got a bad password. That just happened right now. Of course, like the other logs I mentioned, you can always go passing time if you want to see other activity as well. Now, of course, we not only collect user logging, but you can also say other system details or schedules failures, pull server down, virtual servers that go down, new SCs that got created, new SCs that went down, or configuration that were updated. You can see everything, all that information, every type of function that happens or event that gets recorded. Now, if you go to the config audit trail, it's more specific. You're going to see the user logging activity, user authentication activity, but you're also going to see specifically everything related to configuration changes. And you can either search by using the search bar, or you can actually select by specific events. For example, if I go to event ID and I want to see all the config updates that happened in the past month, and I can see the details or any config changes that happen. Like for example, in the config change, you can see the value that was before and the new value. If you can, when you create a new configuration, you're going to see as new create, but you can also see deletion, configuration deletion as well. As well as the event information, you can also go to and to collect data, for later analysis. For that, we go to administration, system, tech support, and again, I'm going to show you how this is done with the CLI, but via the UI, you can hit generate tech support. You can pick which type of tech support you require. You can be very specific on the type of logs that you need, but one recommendation is that I also provide to customers is when you don't know, you always want to collect the controller Devo logs, in which is this category right here. When the issue is specific to a service engine, you always want to pick the service engine that got impacted by the issue, plus a combination of also the Devo logs. Again, if you have a control plane issue, mainly you want to collect Devo logs. This is also useful for the support team. Contact them, they're going to ask for a Devo log as well. The reason why I always say Devo log is that Devo logs collects all the logs. Doesn't matter if the issue was JSOB, if the issue was upgrade, debug logs will collect everything. So it's like a safe option to make sure you're not missing any data. When an issue is about controller, about a service engine, you always want to collect the logs from the service engine, but us, the debug logs as well, because for analysis for yourself, all teams in the debug logs will have correlation of what happened to the service engine. For example, controller communication issues. There's certain things that you always, in this case, for service engine, always recommend to get the service engine logs plus the debug logs. At the same time, in the UI, any crash that occurs either on the controller, meaning crash of a process, or a crash on the service engine, a core file will get generated by the system, and that will get uploaded to the available leader controller. That way, you can easily access them via the UI for later download. These are more verbose than the normal logs, so definitely recommend that if a crash occurs in your environment, this is definitely an engagement you recommend to do with the support team. They will take the core archive, analyze it, and provide you more assistance on details of what it means or what crashed, etc. Okay. So now, from the CLI point of view, let me connect to that same controller. There we go. Let me expand this. Oh. Let's see if I got it this time in one go. I'm going to put easy passwords. There we go. Okay. We SSH to the leader controller. Now we activate the shell. Password again. Okay. Now, like I mentioned for the CLI from the beginning of the video, if you want to know the status of the controller or the cluster, you can go show cluster status. This will highlight specifically if the status, in this case, since I only have one controller node, there's no high availability. So it's just telling me you have the clusters up, but it's only what does no HA. You can also run your show cluster nodes, and this will show me the status of each node of the cluster. Let's say you have a 3-node cluster. In this case, and if one of them is down, it was going to show here. If one of them is invalid, it will show here how the status. If it's starting up or booting up, it will also show here. And these are two commands that are very useful to see a little bit more detail of why the controller may have an invalid status, for example. To collect debug logs for the controller, you can run tech support, show tech support, and you're going to see you have all these options. But the one like I recommend always to collect instead is debug logs. Again, why? Because if you want to collect log based on clustering, debug logs will have that info. If it's based on JSOB issue, debug logs will have that info. So very important that debug logs is the key log to look for when you're not sure what logs to collect. Now, if I want to collect the logs from the service engine, I can also do it from the leader controller, in which we'll talk to the SE, so those logs get uploaded and may available for download in your case. Service engine, and then you highlight the name of the service. After that, when you run it via the UI, those logs will not be available for download in the UI. You have to download them from the box itself. You're going to have to SSH the controller and run it. If you want to know in what directory this data was saved, you can always run show tech support status, and it will highlight in the status or the location where to get it from. Another detail that you get from here, let me get out, is outside of the shell, is the other logs itself. The same logs that you collect using debug logs to collect debug logs or the service engine logs, you of course can look at them live within the controller. So let me go to itself. Now sudo su Let me see if I got anyone go. No, I suck at this. Come on, one more time. There we go. Okay. First directory to look for. Avi logs. There's a lot of logs here. Depending what you're looking for, depending which logs you're going to use. It doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to use all of them. Example. For cluster-related issues, you look at the highlighted here. Well, you know what? Let me change the view. Better. There we go. For cluster-related issues, you're going to look at the founded logs, cluster config, cluster manager, service watcher, all of these. For anything related to Cloud Connector, you're going to look at the following logs. But again, remember, this environment is vCenter. So what vCenter, besides these logs, I'm also looking for this right here. All the ones that start with vCenter. It's very important to note this is very unique to vCenter. For any other environment, Azure, AWS, GCP, you're going to find and log cc_agent, like I mentioned in the previous slides. All the locations of logs that you may be interested in will be in var log. Here you're going to find Postgres logs. You're going to see the syslog, very important, especially when you look at anything related to the system. You're going to see the Nginx directory, in which will have all the logs related to Nginx. Again, this is one of the main services that handle the portal and the API engine. Inside log, there's also another folder called Upstart. Here you're going to see more system-specific logs of the controller. Again, more logs for the Postgres. Well, let me change the view. Right here, you're going to see logs for the Service Engine Manager process. This is one of the main processes that actually talks to the SE and maintains communication to the Service Engine. The same goes for the REST Manager process, which should be right here. If you want to debug alerts, you're going to see more information here in report notifications. Also, even for upgrades, these logs here are very useful for any upgrade issues. So you see, like I mentioned, the logs themselves are very verbose. If you open them up, I mean, it's maybe at first it will be a little bit hard to understand, but you start getting used to it, especially when you know a specific you're looking for. Always have the assistant or the support team, if needed, to help you analyze the data. Okay. Okay. Well, all these steps, like I mentioned in the previous, all the topics that we discussed today are still available in our hands-on lab. The link is in the side with access to the credentials that you need. Feel free to open it up and give it a shot. That way you have an environment you can test all this option out as well. And that'll be it for today. Thank you so much for joining. Until the next video. Take care.